my name is Zaina. I'm a financial coach and I primarily work with women who struggle with debt and financial disorganization. I'm also a core collaborator at Women Who Invest, a platform that supports women of different socioeconomic backgrounds in creating systems to build wealth and sustain it as well. Today I'm actually hosting the video with the co-founder of Women Who Invest, Shahid.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. So I think the first thing we should probably talk about is looking at the reality of investing. What does it look like from your perspective?
With a lot of women that I work with, typically I see that they have great ideas. You know, even when it comes to financial literacy, they have a good foundations of that. However, they get stuck in something I like to call analysis paralysis, and I've talked about this in our other videos as well, which you can check out on our channel. And essentially what this is, that it's a fear of taking action. And when it comes specifically to investing, we see that it's not really a fear of investing itself, but it's of losing your hard-earned money, which is completely valid, right? But then we look at the underlayers of it and we notice that this fear comes from, you know, responsibility, discipline, wanting to do the right way or wanting to follow the right path and not wanting to make a haram mistake. Now it's important to note that this is not a weakness whatsoever. It's actually an amana, which we will explain later how that relates to tawakkul. But essentially it's important to understand these things, or else you're going to end up in a loop of guilt tripping yourself over and over again and not taking action.
That's a very valid point. So when we're looking at the way that women have currently been investing, I think there seems to be a very big focus on just keeping things in cash. But what's the problem with that?
Let's talk about risk and its various forms. Now the first type of risk is the visible one. This is what you typically see on the stock market, prices moving up and down, even with gold as well. Sometimes prices crash, sometimes they don't, and it can impact you in a very direct level, or at the least you could see it happening right in front of you, hence why it's called visible. Now the second type, which is something that not really everyone talks about, is the invisible risk. Prime example of that is inflation, right? And I've talked about this in other videos as well. Now Shahid, let's say you have $100,000, okay? In cash, not doing anything, and inflation is at 5%. In 10 years, I know you're good at math, so
I'm taking a guess.
Okay, in 10 years, how much purchasing power do you lose?
Would it be like around 40%?
Exactly. See, you're good at math. But that's crazy to think about, and it's something that you're not even aware of until it actually happens. 100%. But you will notice it. If you're not noticing it today, for sure you'll notice it in a year or 10 years or 5 years, whatever it may be. So this is something that we really need to understand, and it acts as essentially a motivator for you to take action.
I think, you know, honestly, when you look at the way inflation is, I think a lot of people, the concept's kind of very high level that you don't really see its impact because no one's really measuring inflation against your money.
Definitely.
Right? And so when we're looking at it from the perspective of a woman who's got cash with her for long term, what does that mean for her? Let's say she's decided, you know what, I'm too scared to invest, I'm going to keep the money on my bank account. What would happen next?
Well, for starters, you increase the amount of time that you have to work because your money is not working as hard as you, right? And it's losing its purchasing power year after year. So that is the first thing. And the second thing is, obviously, you're delaying your financial freedom. Let's say your big goal is purchasing a home and then renting it later for income. You're not going to be able to do that unless you take an action forward. If you know right now that it might take you 10 years to get that home with just your salary, and you have done your research, you have understood that it might take you less to do it if you were to put your money into investments, then it's very simple math. You're just delaying your goal because simply of your fear. Shahid, I'm going to direct the next question to you of you know, getting an Islamic perspective on this and talking about what is the relation of risk and trust, especially when it comes to personal finance.
Thank you. All right, Bismillah. So I think when we look at it from an Islamic perspective, one hadith probably comes to mind for everyone, right?
Yeah.
Which is this hadith of aqilha wa tawakkul. And so we've all gone through the story. Someone's told us, you know, you have to tie your camel and trust in God. So there is an emphasis in the and. It is not then, it is not or, it is and do it. So you're doing these two things simultaneously. Yeah. So when you're doing aqilha, which is you being able to take the right steps or methodology to secure what you want. For example, I don't want my camel to, you know, stray into the desert land. I'm gonna tie her, and I trust Allah will then keep her where she is, because that rope could become loose, or something someone might steal her. So now these two things are coming hand in hand, and so the concept of us investing in our finances is very similar. We can't sit in fear thinking, oh, you know, if Allah wanted risk to come to me, it'll come from the heavens and it'll pour money. Inshallah, that will happen. In case that doesn't, we have to work towards other goals. Yeah. And so for us, what we're doing here is we're saying, I understand that Allah's given me an amana, which is this monetary amount, and I want to grow this amana for Allah's sake. So when you start with this intention, you say, I want to grow it because I want to help impact communities. I want to grow it to help impact my family, to help with orphans, whatever your goal is, you've set the right intention. So this idea first is, I set my intention, I'm now going to put it in the right spaces to grow that money. Because like to your point, I don't want to be eaten away by inflation or any other challenges in the market.
So what I'm hearing is intention, action, and then release.
Exactly, result. Yeah. So from the tawakkul perspective, you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has only written what's best for you, right?
Yeah.
In terms of the storyline that He's picked, even your mom would have picked the story.
And
the risk that is written for you has been set from before you were born. So for you, you need to really not think about the fear as so much think about the action. Think about, where am I going to put this is going to make the most impact? How can I make my money work for me in the most halal way possible, inshallah?
Yeah. Okay, well, Shahid, in your, obviously from an Islamic perspective, definitions differ, right? And sometimes we might perceive certain concepts in ways that don't really benefit us, and in ways that are not even explained properly. So what is a clear definition of what tawakkul is in this context and what it isn't? All right.
So when we're looking at, again, the example of tying the camel and trusting in God, we have to understand that tawakkul, is not avoidance. Okay. It is not this idea that, oh, you know what, I'm not gonna tie my camel in the first place because I know she's gonna go off astray.
Yeah. And
so the first thing is, do not avoid putting your money to work for you. The second point is this idea of paralysis by analysis, which is you mentioned it earlier on.
Yes.
This idea that, oh, you know what, I'm going to write a list of all the possible risks that could happen to my camel while she's being tied. Someone can do this and this, and as a result, you never end up taking an action because you're too scared of all the possible outcomes that could happen.
Yeah.
So the second thing is making sure that you're not over-analyzing your investment situation or your investment opportunity.
So do your research, but don't overthink on the expense of taking action.
I think this is actually one thing I'm very conscious of, because I am someone who's very type A, so I will think about something like 10,000 times before I do it. And so specifically with investments, I think that stopped me from pursuing a lot of potential opportunities. And it wasn't actually until I joined the current job that I'm in that I realized, you know what, my manager would always tell me, done is better than perfect. And similarly with investments, don't overdo it where you're like, it has to be a perfect investment with the best return for me to put my money. Okay, the return here could be like 10%, and here it could be 15%, and here it could dip a bit, and here it go up. So always making sure you've not got all your eggs in one basket is also really important.
And I mean, this is something that we teach in our program as well, and that we're always hosting complimentary seminars and workshops. We really teach you on, first of all, how to read economics like a pro, how to read global headlines, how to regulate yourself when you're reading something scary. And of course, in today's world, it is very volatile. We are seeing markets go up and down, crashing all the time. And it can be very intimidating for someone, like especially a beginner, to put their money in a space like that. But that shouldn't hold you back. And as we make more videos, hopefully, we're going to explain more in depth how you can do it safely or how you can do it in accordance to your risk tolerance.